there, this is Monica from the Stitchery, and today we are going to be doing part 2 of the basic crochet tutorial for how to make a cotton dishcloth. We're using our Estelle Yarns Suds Crafting Cotton, which is wonderful for this because it doesn't split very easily, which is very important for a beginner crocheter. It's also soft and comfortable on the hands, very easy to crochet with, and comes in a variety of beautiful colors. We are using the canary color, and that is from the Tone on Tone line of the Suds collection. So in part 1 we learned how to make a foundation chain. This is a foundation chain with 22 chains. If you didn't watch part 1 and don't know how to do this, please go back and watch that tutorial so that you can learn how to make your foundation chain as well. So the next thing we'll be doing is learning how to make a single crochet, which is the simplest of the crochet stitches. And if you know how to do a simple crochet, then you'll be able to move on and do so many other stitches based on that. So where we start with a single crochet is we always go into the second chain from the hook. So if you look, this is sort of your working loop, then you have one chain here. So you can see the bump on the top, the bump on the bottom, and then your second chain is bump on top, bump on bottom there. So that's where you're going to put your hook into when you start your chain. The reason for that is that if you put it in here, you're actually just going in where your yarn already is, so that's going to cause a problem. Also, you need to make a little part for the next row to come up. So we use one chain over for a single crochet, but if we were going to do a taller stitch, then we would end up actually going into the second or third chain, which we'll find out in subsequent lessons. So for now, let's grab our working yarn, and I end up wrapping it around my index finger like I indicated in part 1. It doesn't matter how you wrap it or hold it, just as long as it's not running away from you. So you want to make sure it is a little bit snug, but that it can still slide along your finger as you pull the yarn as you're working. So like I said, we're not going to go into this first chain, but we're going to go into the second. So we're going to put the hook right into that second loop and then do a yarn over, which just means you're putting the yarn over the hook. So easy like this. You can also do it like that, but it's easiest just to grab it and then yarn over, pull through, and now you have 2 loops on the hook. So you have your original loop where you started, and then you have the one that you just pulled through with the yarn over. So now what you're going to do is take your yarn over and pull it through both of these. And once you've done that, you've completed your single crochet. So again, before I do that, I want to point out I'm holding at the base of this stitch with my middle finger and my thumb so that I have something to work against. If I'm holding down here, it's really hard to get into my stitches. If I'm not holding it tightly at all, it's really difficult to do anything with it. So for me, I like to hold it between my middle finger and my thumb so that when I'm moving between these loops or doing anything, that I have a good stable grip on it. That doesn't mean a death grip, just hold it snugly so that it can't get away if you're giving it a little tug. The other thing that I want to point out too is that you don't want to pull with your working yarn super tight, because then it's going to be really hard to pull that through this first loop. So just have it nice and easy. You want it to have basically a bit of contact between, but not super tight and not super loose. So you can see when I went super loose, it slipped off my finger. The other thing is, if you do pull it tight and you realize you can't get through, then all you have to do is give your hook a little bit of a tug that way so that you're loosening this up a little bit. So you can give it a little tug. Basically want them to be a little bit even there, and then yarn over and pull through both loops. So now you have just one loop left on your crochet hook, and then you're ready to go into your next stitch. So now because I was pulling on this for demonstration, it's a little bit loose, but that'll get fixed up in the next one. But you can see that all of this stuff is happening in this loop. So you don't want to go into here again. you want to go into the next loop. So we're going to put our hook in, we're going to yarn over, pull through once, and then I'm going to grab it at the base of the stitch again with my middle finger and thumb and give it a little lift so that I have a bit of room that I can pull through. Now I have 2 loops on here, and I'm going to yarn over and pull through both loops. So now you can see we have 2 stitches which have developed here. So we have 1 single crochet here and another single crochet here. So we have 2 stitches. This will be our first row that we're developing. So I'm going to get my yarn ready, and now we'll look, we've already crocheted into this loop. This is where our second stitch is. So we're going to insert the hook into this third loop. I'm just going to help it a little bit as it's a little bit tight, and then yarn over, pull through that loop, and then grab it with the base of your thumb and your finger, give it a little lift or a little tug, and then yarn over and pull through both loops. So I'm just going to do a few of these quickly so that you can see what this row is going to look like, what the single crochet stitches will look like. And don't worry, in no time flat you'll be moving along fairly quickly as well. So I'm going to pull my hook out to give you a bit more of a view. So you can see this is from the side view. This is the foundation chain that we are crocheting into, and then these are the single crochet stitches from the side, and then these are the single crochet stitches from the top. So I'm just going to now finish the rest of the row, and then we will learn how to turn and work on the subsequent rows. Okay, so I'm just finishing off this first row, which is the single crochets all the way across. The last loop I haven't done yet. I haven't crocheted into that very last chain because sometimes people can get confused as to what is actually a stitch. So this last chain will have the bump on it from your slip stitch, because the last chain is actually what was the very first slip stitch. So we're going to insert our hook, yarn over, pull through, grab, we're going to have a little lift, yarn over, and pull through both. So now we're at the end of the row. So we will actually have 21 single crochets, because remember we skipped that first chain. And so if we counted our bumps across the top, we would have 21 stitches. So now to turn, what we do is we chain 1. So same chain as we did when we were making our foundation. So all we do is we have our loop on our hook, we yarn over and pull through, and then you've made a chain here at the end of the row. So what this chain does is it creates some lift so that you can now go across row 2. If you didn't have the chain, then it would pull that first stitch down and you would end up with a bit of a wobbly edge, which definitely wouldn't look so great. So now that we've created that first chain, we're just going to turn, and literally all we do is flip this over, and now we're going this way across. So from right to left again, but we're going across the stitches. Now the important thing is to know where we're going to be stitching into. And one of the things that's really important to know, especially as a beginner, is where to go with the hook. So when I started crocheting, I had zero clue and just did what I thought was right based on a pattern. And then I started following a great crochet designer, Dishcloth, and she has a beautiful blog, and it's called lookatwhatimade.net. And on there, one of the things that she blogs about is the anatomy of a stitch. So if you ever want some more information, she does a great job of describing exactly what each part of the stitch is and why it's important to go into certain parts for certain things. So for us though, we're going to look at this from the top down, and then we'll be able to see what our stitches look like. So if you look at them here, you have little kind of what I say are little V's all the way across. Each one of those V's is a stitch. So you have a top part of it and a bottom part of it when you're looking from the top. Now when we do just a regular single crochet stitch, we are going to go underneath the top and the bottom of the V. So if I'm going into this second one here, so we have one right here on the end that our loop is coming out of, and then the second one here. So I go in like a little tiny hole on the side underneath what is the front loop and the back loop. So hopefully you can sort of see the silver from my hook going through there. So this is where you're inserting your hook to make your stitch. So through the side, underneath what's called the front loop and what's called the back loop. So sometimes in a pattern you'll see someone refer to do a single crochet front loop only. That would mean that you're just inserting under just that front loop, so you're not going through both. So that looks a little bit different. Or sometimes it'll say to go through the back loop, which actually means that you're going to insert in the top and just catch that back loop. But for a regular SC or single crochet, you're going to go underneath both. So let's get started. I'm going to grab my working yarn again and loop it around a couple times. And so the first stitch you can see is right here. So not the chain that you've just made to heighten the row, but it's right here, these two little loops. So again, you're going to go in the side here, so underneath both of these. And then for your regular single crochet, just like in the foundation chain, yarn over, pull through to again have two loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through, and you've made a single crochet. So let's do that for the second one. So you can again see you have a little V there with your two loops. You're going to come in the side, and you'll notice that your hook, when you poke it underneath, it will quite automatically and very neatly go under those two loops. It's a natural place for it to end up. So then you're going to yarn over, pull through, give it a little lift so that this loop isn't too tight, and yarn over and pull through both loops. And then you're just going to repeat that all the way across the row. So you should have 21 single crochets all after you've done the whole row as well. So I'm just going to finish this row and chat a little bit while I'm doing it, because one of the things that beginners especially find difficult is knowing where that last stitch is on the row. And what happens is if you don't end up going into the correct last stitch, then you end up missing a stitch, and all of a sudden your dishcloth or whatever you happen to be working on keeps getting narrower and narrower. So I found that when I started out, I was making a scarf, and my scarf started getting narrower because I kept missing the last stitch of the row. So if you're not sure if you've made all the stitches or not, a good thing to do is to count your stitches and make sure that you have the same number that you started with at the beginning of the row. So we should have 21 every time, because remember we chained 22 for the foundation, and then we started in that second chain, so that means we lost one. So we have 21 stitches on each row. So when I get near the end here, and if I think, okay, I'm done here, then I would go back and count and see how many I have. Now you're counting by the bumps here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. So we're one short. And to me, that is obvious because I'm used to looking for it. But to beginners, this one is hard to see because you've got that ending bump from the beginning of the row here. So it's kind of difficult to see that this is a stitch. The hole in the side isn't as obvious. the loop on the top, you have to give it quite a twist to see what it is. So it's good at the beginning to count your stitches. So this one's a bit more difficult to poke through. So you might want to use the end of your finger or your nail and just slide the 2 bumps over top if you're having a difficult time. This is why it's nice to use a yarn that doesn't split very well, because or else you'll end up poking your hook between the yarn fibers rather than in the correct space. So we'll now yarn over, pull through, and pull through both. So then we just keep on going. So we'll do the next row. We do a chain 1 just like in the previous row. So if you need some review, you can go back to that. Turn, and then you're going to go not in that first chain you just created, but the first stitch. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through both, and across you go. So right now we have 1 row. We have our foundation chain. We have 1 row of single crochets, a row of single crochets back. So we have foundation chain, 1 row, 2 row. And we're starting on row number 3. So you should be carrying on like this. You can do as many rows as you want to end up with a square. So once you have a square that gives you the size of dishcloth that you want, you will come back for part number 3, and in part 3 I'll show you how to finish it off, how to add a loop if you'd like a loop on it, and also how to weave in your ends so the whole thing doesn't fall apart the first time it gets used. So thanks very much for watching our tutorial today. I wish you the best of luck with your starting of your dishcloth, and we'll see you for part 3.